Welcome to EconomicZ101, the podcast made for Gen Z by Gen Z, bridging the gap between economics, finance, current events, and our generation, with speakers Vish, Ritam, Sinan, and myself, Mihir. Today, we're going to be talking about pop culture's impact on the modern economy. Obviously, with the way that things have been going in the 21st century, pop culture has had such an impact on the way that people in America interact on a day-to-day basis. Pop culture can range from anything, from TV to games like Pokemon to social media apps like TikTok and YouTube. With pop culture having such a big impact on how people interact with each other on a day-to-day basis, pop culture gives people a sense of community and a sense of togetherness in talking to one another. Today, we're going to be mixing and analyzing the differences between pop culture today in our generation and the past, and also why it has such a big impact on America's mixed economy. To begin with, we'll start with Vish and we'll talk about how does America have a mixed economy and what is it essentially?
So before I go into why America is a mixed economy, I'm going to define what a market economy and a mixed economy are. So a market economy is basically an economic system where the businesses control the prices of goods and services, and they're guided by the interactions going on in a country's economy. So it's very capitalist. And mixed economy is pretty much the same thing, except the government has much more influence, making it a mix of capitalism and socialism. So within America, businesses do have a lot of independence, but the government still regulates what's going on within the economy. So it isn't exactly completely a market economy, which is why it's called a mixed economy.
I mean, I can agree with that. Thing is, in America, a lot of people like to taunt the fact that it's a bridge between capitalism and socialism, and that's part of the reason why it's such a great place to live. But I argue that in recent years, and especially with the expansion of industrialization and the increasing technologization of America, capitalism has become more rampant, and forms of socialism with social reform, helping the working class, have become less pronounced as conservatives in America have taken control. But that can also be said about the market economy and how it's evolved over time.
Yeah, to that point, I think people are saying that it's more capitalist because of the huge businesses we have now, such as like Google, Amazon, Apple. They all have so much power within their like markets, and they basically control everything that's going on within their specific group of products. So yeah, I get why people would say that it's much more capitalist now.
I mean, the thing that really doesn't make sense also is how in today's world, where in our own society, a lot of people say how socialism is bad and is a deficit to our country. Yeah, it's already being demonstrated towards this U.S. Economy.
Mm-hmm. In parts, I can agree to that, and it's probably why it makes it easier for even in small economic sense for small businesses to promote themselves, since people don't always have to compete and try to advertise at large scale events where when the internet exists in whole to other people. Businesses also have a much larger reach with the internet, so the audience of them would expand naturally and make it easier for business to expand, creating marketing and making it more rampant to growth. A market economy, in opposition to a mixed economy, is much more aggressive in nature.
Yeah, with a market economy, you don't have small businesses being able to come up easily because, like, since it's basically a competition between businesses, when you have a really strong business in a particular group of products, then they control everything. Like what we were talking about before with like Apple or Google, like you can't really have, um, like you can't just start your own search engine because there's so many powerful search engines that already exist. You can't really, like, no one's going to want to go to yours.
Mhm. I mean, I think that probably draws more attention to how, even though it's an economic structure and a focus on small businesses or large businesses and their relationship with each other, it this impact and the economic impact has a major connection with social structure itself. For example, people want to live in places where job opportunities are more prominent and where big companies and corporations are. It tends to be more populated and more eventful. For example, New York, San Francisco, LA, Chicago, Seattle.
I mean, I completely agree with that. You can tell that by people, there are small businesses everywhere, but if you look at all these big corporations and everything, they're offering a lot of incentives, good health care, $15 minimum wage, increased $15 minimum wage. And I think that's a negative towards those who want to support small businesses because it's not really up to them. It costs a lot to make the products they have. And that's why it costs a lot more to get their products.
An economy like this really does hurt like small businesses and small corporations because it also adds to the fact that like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, right? Wealthier people, more well-known people are able to advertise their own products or businesses on a much larger scale, whereas like and they have like much more control over prices and like whatever they're selling. As a smaller like business that's still trying to grow like in popularity might not have the like the same chances of being as successful.
No,
Alright, Christian,
yeah,
go ahead.
the
Yeah.
the way that like I was going to add to, because we were already talking about how our economy has changed so much already. Like the way we market now is also, it's changed so much within the past few decades. Like before, like people who were trying, like salesmen usually went out to seek other customers, like by going door to door or going in really populated places. But then now you see like customers coming to businesses because of how prevalent social media is within our culture and how much of an impact it has on our economy. Because now you can see an advertisement on Instagram or even on TV, and then you just go to their website or you go to one of their social media pages that you can already like do something with that. So it's changed a
Exactly.
lot.
I mean, you can go to our Instagram page at EconomicZ101 and check us out there, or our TikTok, which has the same handle. But rallying off that point, with capitalism, employment is inherently based on the big principle of supply and demand. So this also tends to create a lot of unemployment during negative situations like recessions, and also might create an abundance of jobs when the economy is on a curve. When we're talking about how corporations, and Ritam, you mentioned how larger scale companies can give incentives to people to work for them. I think that's part of the issue in the system and the mixed economy that America operates under. We all there's a lot of conservative talking points about how America is a place for opportunities, entrepreneurship flourishes, but in fact, it's much harder to flourish in this kind of situation than it has been in the past due to the factors that we mentioned before. And I think it won't get better unless there is major government intervention or actual social structure that centers around helping the small man grow and helping the working class compete up to the big man. It's really interesting too because it provides this type of situation where everyone wants to have a sustainable job and they want to work at a good rate for themselves, but they also want to provide for people who are taking that creative endeavor and working towards finding their own dreams and achieving them.
I mean, I know previously a lot of presidential candidates who did run tried to help combat this in some sort of ways. I know Andrew Yang wanted to implement a UBI, Universal Basic Income system. Another one was Bernie Sanders, who was very popular for including socialistic ideas to help towards an American society. I think these are great ways. And to be honest, I never really understood how they never got to the traction that many other presidential candidates, such as Joe Biden or President Trump, had.
I can attest to that sometimes politics get really weird in our country, and they start to set trends and different propaganda leads to different results. But it's all part of the common thing that we came here to discuss about is pop culture and the way that we connect with each other as humans. Culture is at the very subset and at the very center of how we interact with each other. Like I said at the beginning, with how, well, whether it be TV, politics, anime, Pokemon cards, it could be literally anything, but that's how people and humans, which are naturally information craving, extroverted, and connecting people like to form with each other. And that's why pop culture is so prominent in where we are. I mean, we talked about how the difference between the market economy and the mixed economy that America has, but pop culture is at the center of it and essentially dictates a lot of the differences and changes that happen in it. And I mean, we can give a couple of examples of how pop culture is prominent today, right?
I mean, yeah, pop culture is basically everything, to be honest. I grew up with lots of forms of pop culture media, such as Pokemon. I remember collecting the cards as a little kid, and currently sometimes I even collect them now. I remember as a little kid, I used to read Harry Potter all the time. I was considered a Potterhead. That's the name of the fandom. And fandoms is one source of popular pop culture items. So,
No, yeah. I remember when I was in like sixth grade, I was also into Pokemon too around that time. And I remember you were talking about presidential elections. And I just remember how like there were so many memes online of like Trump and just his personality. And then like people would just start like making fun of him without even knowing anything about like the policies he was trying to promote or anything like that. It was just because of like the culture that was surrounding us. So I feel like it affects so many different things.
I know they the Trump presidential media and their team had said something like Pokemon to the polls. Like Pokemon go to the polls, like I do, like a corny saying like that, and that's part of the reason, even irrespective of how to and how irrespective of their policies and how things work, um, it's different and it's interesting to see how humans' common interests leads to economic decisions and economic opportunities. For example, Gen Z, our generation, as opposed to many of the generations that have came before us, have had such a strong communal sense and connection to each other because of the major thing that connects us, the internet and social media. With new apps popping up like TikTok, YouTube's been around for a long time. Creators and just normal people in high school, we can talk to each other. We can create a post history. We can have our own stories and we can project them to the world, even as insignificant as they may be. Having only 1,000 followers or so, it's still important on that small scale.
I mean, yeah, completely. If we look at that pop culture, I believe a lot of people, what we do is we use pop culture to help us create our own sense of identity. We relate to all these types of pop culture and all these sources of media, and then we relate to them. And then we use that to communicate with other people to discuss their interests. And that's how we make friends, that's how we make bonds and so on. And that can help towards economical decisions and so on.
I mean, as said by a famous Harvard economic professor, urbanization is the key in the formation of popular culture. For people that lived in the same small villages or farmed and found themselves in crowded cities with cultural diversity, diverse opinions and similar opinions help to create a sense of togetherness and create a system where people can function together. This was part of the reason why even today with social media and even back then in during the industrial revolution, economic enterprise and public opinion came together to form so many great things. I mean, at the start of the 20th century, the print industry itself mass produced illustrated newspapers and periodicals, as well as serialized novels and detective stories. Anything that combines creative thinking with economic enterprise is what creates strength in pop culture and its impact and connection with economic America. I mean, in the sense that that works. Pop culture also impacts economy in a large way. With that connection, how we discussed, now we're at our third segment now. Our organization is at 100%. Let's think about what we talked about so far. We talked about how the impact of pop culture has had, especially in our generation, and how capitalist America under a mixed economy has functioned. Let's combine the two things. Why is it so important, and what are the correlations between economic impact and culture?
Well, I just want to say that like culture and economy just in general, they largely influence each other. Like when you think about it, just to put it in like a very basic sense, if you grew up in an area where like a bunch of the kids on the street like to play soccer every day, you would most likely engage in that sport too, as opposed to like baseball or another sport. So just in that sense, you might be like in the future, you might be geared towards purchasing soccer center products such as like trading cards, soccer balls, equipment, even like video games. Like many people know FIFA, right? So this is just like one example out of millions where like the culture and economy can like highly have an influence on each other, as it really depends on like economy is really geared towards how like you're raised or how you're growing up, and like basically everything around you influences major decisions that you make in your life.
I mean, that's a big connection to the sociological and human science study of like, the snowball effect. An initial state or small significance of something eventually builds on and builds on, like you said, Sinan, whether it be the way of environment that you grew up in or the way that people around you are acting. Everything builds up and creates impact in its own way, and that can connect deeply to the economy.
That snowball effect comes into many large factors as well. You look at brands like Supreme, Vans, a lot more than these, and they've always started from some small traction, either from a shoe built for factory production, or some skateboarding shop that was a local one. It eventually grows traction, and people use these methods in order to fully like economically grow from themselves. So just from having a small shop to getting more people to say that this is cool, these brands are amazing, you should buy more of them, a lot more people are going to purchase them, and it's going to gain traction.
Yeah, and especially with how big social media is in our society today, it's really easy for the snowball effect to happen, because just seeing something on social media, like let's say, for example, with K-pop, like when when did it become like really big? I'm not exactly sure. I think it was like um before like 2010s or early 2010s, but then like just a few people might see it, but then as they share it and like more people see it on social media or YouTube, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until now, like look, BTS is like, I'm pretty sure they were like number one at one point on Spotify for like one of their songs or something like that. Like it just grows so fast. And this, it's not only for like K-pop with the example I used, it can happen for many different things. So culture like being able to be spread more in our society now, it also affects like the way our economy works too, because now you can buy things related to whatever is spreading, and then we can like other people, like different nations can connect with each other more. Yeah.
I mean, you bring up a big point that, and I think I can touch on this a little more. Even with across different cultures, whether it be Asia, like you said, with East Asia with K-pop, or it be in North America with westernized sociology and more progressive ideals, products essentially brought from anywhere else that you aren't comfortable with, i.e. like a foreign nation, maybe catered for your domestic place to buy. This principle is extremely relevant in economics, as it caters to different financial sectors, whether it be new markets that are creating. Like let's talk about what's happening right now with Jeff Bezos and how billionaires are having a space race to different places, irrespective of where they came from, what country they were born in, what culture they grew up with. Having common goals towards a certain thing and having creative interests allows people to grow up and have bigger ideas and progress towards them. I mean, younger people often tend to make these decisions in their lives, and through this, whether it comes from someone who's a teenager or someone who's like a middle-aged man, international trade or international changing between ideas is open no matter where you come from, and cultural distances grow shorter and shorter.
Do you really want to talk about Bezos's laugh, dude? That was literally like an evil villain laugh during that like one interview. It was funny.
I mean, he kind of is like our Earth's own Lex Luthor. He's worth like $200 billion right now. Amazon employees are at an all-time high, saying that working conditions are terrible, benefits are low, but it's okay because Amazon's making money, right? I mean, that also brings me to the point where pop culture icons, like, hated to say or not, Jeff Bezos is an icon in the America that we're living in, and there's so many of them and they have such a large status and impact on how they function throughout our society.
Yeah, like you even see that with like YouTubers. And I think I can kind of tie this back to our our podcast about, I think it was cryptocurrency and like scams. Like with the influence that these YouTubers have, like since with we were talking about a cryptocurrency scam with one of the people who was part of that phase group, and with his influence he was able to like make a bunch of people buy one of the cryptocurrencies that he was promoting, and then he was able to scam all these people out of the money just with his influence on social media. Not even like some kind of power he had, it was just his following base that he used to get so much money.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can.
Yeah, so I can definitely agree with that. And like, although there might be like negative aspects of like where popular icons might take advantage of their viewers and like, as you said, like with FaZe, like scam their viewers, there's also like neutral or even positive effects of this. Like, let's talk more recently. Like, I think a lot of us know how Kanye West recently dropped his new Donda album, and how also along with this album drop, he also struck like a 10-year deal with Yeezy Gap. And because of this, like now Kanye West and like this clothing brand Gap, now they have a deal where like since his influence like literally knows no bounds, like he's so like popular in like the rapping industry that like many of his fans might be inclined to like purchase new items from Gap. You know, as a clothing brand that's like recently in the past few years been like on the decline, it might revive this like this clothing brand Gap, and it even might have an effect on its stock market value, as like with more purchases and more value going into this company, the stock share might increase in the stock market. And there's also like as I said before, there could be negative effects, but there's also good sides about popular icons like having a major influence through like pop culture.
So speaking of Kanye West's, Gap deal, just a reminder, we have a TikTok that did discuss about Kanye West's brand. So the thing about that brand itself is the fact that he's doing a partnership with them only shows that he has great marketing strategies. He uses Gap as a way for people to be like, wow, Kanye is working with a brand that we mostly shop at, which must mean this is a more cheaper than usual. It's a $200 jacket, by the way, and I don't think it's as it's pretty expensive. Let's be honest. But moving on from that, we see that like Kanye West and different various pop artists use these brands in order to help like finance their decisions, and they get lots of money from it.
Yeah, in addition with like money and like economics, it's not just like economics. It's literally like as we said before, culture affects literally every aspect of our lives, whether it be through education, politics, art, engineering, psychology. Almost everything is affected through pop culture, and not just pop culture, culture in general. And what like pop culture specifically might not be like the most prevalent and well-known culture among like older generations, its impact is like immense, and like it spreads through so many means. So for example, if you look at like in cinemas, so we all, not all of us, but there was a movie released back in 2014 known as The Interview. I think some of us may have watched it. It's a satirical movie that follows like two American journalists who travel to North Korea for an interview with the supreme leader Kim Jong-un. It's really funny. You guys should watch it. But anyways, in their journey, like they're hired by like the U.S. government to like assassinate him, and like it's really funny. But also like through like this movie, they kind of expose like many downsides of North Korean society, where like they show like poverty, emptiness, totalitarian regime, and other stuff, right? And like as North Korea also looked at this movie before like its screening time, they literally had cyber terrorists threaten to take action against like the U.S. government, like, and any other cinemas releases for this movie. And because of this, the U.S. had to digitally release this movie instead, where so they wouldn't get hacked as North Korea had threatened. But like to end it all, like with this movie, you can see that like these pop culture references and like the very culture of various nations itself can have an influence on like major businesses, including the cinema industry, where a movie that could have been like top grossing made a lot of money for them, it that didn't happen as it was had to be released digitally.
Yeah.
I think Mahir can take over from here.
I mean, it's really interesting too, because as you said, pop culture and culture in general has such an impact, and that begs the question: if we think that culture is one of the, or if not the most impactful social factor, and I'd say yes, because culture not only influences like everything that we talked about, like our business, engineering, whatever. It impacts like every facet of our lives. Everything that we do is influenced to some kind, and it's the center of it is the interaction between people, and that's what makes culture so important. Whether we grow up of someone of Asian descent or someone of European descent, the thing that binds us together through our social structure, the languages that we grow up with, the people that we surround ourselves with, that's part of the reason why culture has such a big impact on the modern economy. Whether it be through the music, like if Kanye's ever going to drop an album, or through the politics that we consume on a daily basis, it's massive, and it'd be ignorant to ignore all these things. I'd say it poses a good question and starts to get through everything and show why we came to talk about today. I think this is probably one of my favorite podcast ideas that we've done so far, because not only did I get to talk about the GOAT Kanye West, I got to discuss about how America gets a little too capitalist sometimes, but I think we got through all our material today, and I really appreciate you guys tuning in again. We're gonna have, I mean, this is our third podcast this week. We are pumping it up, and it's only gonna get better from here. Our next one is gonna drop in a few days, and we really appreciate you coming through.
Let's be honest here. By the time we make 100 podcasts, Donda still won't be released.
I mean, that might just be true. The life of Pablo took him like what, almost 3 years. Well, regardless of that, thank you guys for coming in today. This has been our 6th edition of the podcast, and we're only gonna do more. This has been me, Mahir, and our other speakers, Ritam, Vish, Sanan. Thank you for joining.